Well, hey friends, I hope you're well. A few days ago on Instagram, I sent out this post and I asked you if you had one question that you could ask about specialty coffee, what would it be? And I collected all those answers and I'm going to answer some of them right here and right now. So keep your eyes on Instagram in the future for when I ask these questions if you want your question to be answered in a future video. But first, let's pour some coffee. This video, like any video, is best enjoyed with a fresh cup of coffee. So I'm going to pour this washed Ethiopian. I hope you have a cup of coffee as well. And with that out of the way, let's answer the first question. This first question comes in from @eng.caffeine on Instagram, and they ask, is it possible to keep pre-ground coffee fresh for a month after grinding? And that's a great question. Thanks for asking. Coffee is a fruit, and the thing that we call the bean is actually the seed of the fruit. And so once it's harvested, just like any other fruit, it begins to degrade over time. Now it's actually rather stable in its green bean or seed form, but once it's exposed to high heat in the roasting process, that's when the degradation of that flavor really begins to advance. And this is the thing about coffee. How do we keep it fresh until we're ready to drink it? And I know pre-grinding your coffee can be tempting, and it actually is pretty convenient, especially when you're traveling, for example. But what pre-grinding your coffee does is it exposes more of the surface area of that bean to oxygen and light, and both of those things increase oxidation. This is the exchange of the gas of oxygen for the carbon dioxide that's trapped inside those coffee beans that keeps it fresh. So I actually wouldn't recommend, under just about any circumstance, pre-grinding your coffee. I store all of my whole bean coffee at home in these. This is a fellow Atmos container. This is the 0.7 liter version in matte black. And I also have some of these glass ones. What I love about these containers, and Atmos actually is short form for atmosphere, because it does a good job of protecting your beans from light and from oxygen. You can see that there's no light touching these coffee beans. And if you listen closely, you can hear that they're actually vacuum sealed inside this lid. If you twist it, it removes the air from this canister. You can see this little green indicator saying that this is now sealed. And this helps to extend the shelf life of the whole coffee bean. So however you're storing your coffee beans at home, whether it's in the bag or in a container like this, make sure that it is not exposed to oxygen or light. Now you notice this glass one, of course, has an exposure to light because it's glass. So I don't keep this anywhere near a window, and you can see I have the smaller ones. These are mostly for travel for me, so I don't really mind too much if they're exposed to light because I'm going to drink this small dose in a short amount of time. Speaking of grinding coffee, these next questions have everything to do with the grind size. In fact, this was the most popular question I got, and it came in a couple different forms. For example, should grind size change depending on roast? That's from @TomboSmith. @Brandon Beardsley asks, is there such thing as a universal grind size? That's a great question. And @moybueno.co asks, there has to be a better way to measure grind size. And I agree. When it comes to grinding coffee, your grind size, and specifically your grind particle distribution, is one of the biggest contributing factors to how your coffee is going to taste and how well it is extracted. So what is the perfect grind size? Well, I'm here to tell you that there isn't one. Grind size changes depending on so many variables like water temperature, brew method, brew ratio, your dose, the type of coffee, the origin, the roast profile. All of these things are going to dictate a different grind size. And even if you and I had the same grinder, it's virtually impossible that they're calibrated equally. So grind size 13 for me may not be grind size 13 for you. So what are we supposed to do? Well, when it comes to dialing in a coffee, and specifically with grind size, here's what I like to say. Grind as fine as you can until you perceive the taste of bitterness, and then just back it off a notch or two. And for that specific coffee on that specific brew method with your grinder, that's going to be the sweet spot. Now, your sweet spot is going to be in a different sweet spot than mine, and that's okay. It's for that reason that there isn't a universal grind size. There can't be. And I know that may not be the answer you were looking for. It's not as simple as just giving you a number, but I think it's the answer you deserve. And this is going to enable you to dial in your grind size at home just the way you like it. On the topic of grinders, and specifically grinding at home, @erica.stats_ on Instagram asks, what's the best home grinder for an affordable price? And that's a question I get all the time on Instagram. Here's the thing about coffee grinders. You're going to get what you pay for. There is not a way to cheap out on a home coffee grinder and get the performance that your coffee deserves. So what are you supposed to do? Well, for a moderate investment of, let's say, $50, you can get a fine hand grinder like the Porlex Mini, for example. There'll be links to all of these in the description down below. The Porlex Mini was one of my first burr grinders. I still use it for travel. I think you can get them for about 50 bucks. Moving up a price bracket to just over $100 is the beloved Baratza Encore. This was my first real electric burr grinder, and I just got rid of it recently. It treated me really well. It's most people's first entry-level burr grinder, and in a lot of cases, I think it actually punches well above its weight as far as price point goes. And then just above that, at around $300 USD, is going to be the Fellow Ode brew grinder. Now, this grinder was just released by Fellow Products, and if you want to watch my full review on that grinder, just click the pop-out banner up there. But for $300, I think the performance of this grinder is unmatched. I have another grinder on my bar that's worth about $700, and any difference in performance between those two grinders is honestly negligible. The Ode has well exceeded a lot of my expectations, so from $300 and down, those are my 3 recommendations. Okay, at Mr. Thomas Hardy asks on Instagram, what do you think of instant coffee? Smirk face. Thanks for the question, Thomas. And I appreciate the smirk face because I think what you're inferring here is that instant coffee has traditionally just been bad. And I've actually written a blog post about it that's also linked in the description box below. But there are actually really great forms of specialty instant coffee, and I want to talk about 2. Here are 2 instant coffees that I drink and actually really enjoy. This one is from Luminous and this one is from Clementine, but you'll see the bags are much different sizes, and that's because they're 2 different versions of instant coffee. This one is a crystallized version. So basically the coffee is brewed and then crystallized, so basically dried. And this is the instant coffee that you're familiar with, where you put the packet into your cup and put boiling water in it and it dissolves. This other type of instant coffee is a little bit newer to the scene, and it's more accurately called steeped coffee. And so what you're gonna find in here looks much like a tea bag, because that's functionally what it is. There's high quality coffee in that tea bag and you just steep it in some boiling water. I like both of these versions of instant coffee, and the reason is they're both made with high quality coffee products. When you start with a high quality coffee, you can make a really high quality instant coffee. It's not the methodology that makes a bad product, it's the original product itself. And traditionally that cheap instant coffee that you find at the grocery store is made with really bad coffee, so that's why it sucks. But these coffees don't suck because these are 2 roasters, like I said, Luminous and Clementine, who are roasting really good coffee and making a really good instant coffee out of it. Now, speaking of water, Nick Campbell on Instagram asks, how important is good water? And that's a question that I don't get asked enough. Friends, coffee is over 98% water. 98% water. And here's the thing, a lot of us spend a lot of time and a lot of money focusing on other variables and investing into better gear and higher quality coffee without ever consider what type of water we're using to brew that coffee. And I'm no 8th grade science teacher, but we do need to talk about chemistry just for a moment, because coffee is a solution. You take a solvent, which is water, and you pour it over a solute, which is the coffee, and what gets dissolved and then through the filter is your solution. That's what you drink as your coffee, but that solution is made up of 98% water. It is the primary ingredient in your beverage. So what type of water should you be brewing coffee with? Now, at the risk of talking about too much science, it's how many minerals in that water actually determine what gets extracted out of the coffee and ends up in your cup. Now, I know that's a lot, so let me break it down for you. This is what I use to brew coffee at home. Well, not just this. I actually dissolve this little packet into a gallon of distilled water, and this is called third wave water. The folks at Third Wave Water have put some minerals into this packet that are designed for brewing coffee. This has a TDS reading, which is total dissolved solids, of about 150 parts per million, and it's pretty heavy on the magnesium. I love using this because it's cheap, it's effective, and it ensures that I'm using the same quality water every time I brew. So whatever water you're using to brew at home, I would suggest making sure that it's the same water every day. I would also suggest that it's filtered. So don't just use tap water without at least putting it through a Brita filter or something similar. There are lots of great coffee-specific water filters on the market nowadays, and you can find those with a simple Google search. I'll put some links in the description as well. But good quality water is going to help you make great quality coffee. At @sub_Verter on Instagram also wants to know about water and says, how important is water temperature and what's the impact on your cup? Well, water temperature is a hotly contested subject, pun very intended. If you search best brewing temperature on Google, you're probably going to find something between 195 degrees Fahrenheit to 205 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, why is that? Because coffee requires heat to be extracted properly. That's why you brew with hot water and not cold water. We'll talk about cold brew maybe in another video, but for the purpose of this answer, you want to be brewing with hotter that is as hot as possible. So yes, I'm saying hotter than 205 degrees Fahrenheit. If you can set your kettle to 210 degrees Fahrenheit, go ahead and do it. And I want you to do that for a couple reasons. First, the complex compounds in your coffee that you want to extract, this is sugars and acids, they actually require high heat to be extracted. So if you want those high content sugars, you need to be using higher temperature water to get them. But also when you pour water from the kettle, you're going to lose temperature as soon as it leaves the spout. So the temperature of the water in your kettle is actually not going to be the temperature of the water in your coffee bed. If you have an instant read thermometer, go ahead and try this next time you brew. Stick that thermometer inside your bed and note that your brew temperature might not even exceed 190 degrees Fahrenheit in that bed. For that reason, I think you should be brewing with hotter water all the time. @SamWild on Instagram asks, what's your go-to drink besides coffee? Admittedly, I'm not much of a tea guy. I don't really care for too many other hot beverages. So when I'm not drinking coffee, you'll find me drinking water because it's really healthy for you. If you're watching this, you're probably not drinking enough water. I'm gonna take a sip right now. Because this is a pillar of your health. I am drinking water all the time. You should be drinking water all the time. So go ahead, you have my permission, pause this video and get a drink of water because you need to be drinking more water. Now, if I'm not drinking water or coffee and it's sometime after dinner time, you'll usually find me drinking a Negroni. I really like cocktails and especially this one. It's actually a really simple cocktail. It's a 1:1:1 ratio, which means it's 1 ounce Campari, 1 ounce sweet red vermouth, and 1 ounce gin. I have all of those ingredients local here to me, except the Campari, but I love the botanical nature of this cocktail. Gin's my favorite spirit, so this cocktail has everything in it that I love about a good cocktail. Let me know in the comments below if you're not drinking coffee or water, what's your favorite beverage? I wanna know.
@David Green asks, what essentials do you need on your coffee bar? Well, David, you don't need that, and you don't need that, and you don't need that, and you probably don't need any of that. All you need is something to grind your coffee with, something to heat your coffee with, and something to filter your coffee with. And @NBH, to answer your question, my low budget starter kit is linked in the description box below. I hope that helps. @Rafa and Coffee asks, what metrics should I use to evaluate my cup? And that's a great question. You can track all these metrics like dose and ratio and brew temperature and brew time, but none of those metrics are going to tell you how well you did. The only metric that can tell you how good your coffee was how good it tastes. And you can only get into the sweet spot and know that you're in the sweet spot by tasting your coffee. So taste what you make and trust what you taste. Now I know what you're saying because people ask me all the time, Alexander, how can I improve my palate so I know what I'm tasting? Well, here are my tips. Try new things. Pick up 2 different varietals of peaches, a Red Haven and a Baby Gold. Taste them side by side and note the differences. What makes this one different than this one? Alternatively, pick up something you've never had before, like this pile of dog poop. I'm kidding, this is a tamarind. Pick up a fruit in the tropical fruit section that you've never had before and learn from it. Log those memories so the next time you taste a coffee that reminds you of the sweetness of a tamarind, you have language to put to it. Now I do this all the time. Every time I eat, I ask myself questions. What makes this acidic? What makes this sweet? I log those memories and they inform what I taste in coffee. Now, when it comes to tasting coffee, there are certain coffees that taste certain ways, and they tend to taste like that all the time. @BaileyLynn_1994 asks, what coffee regions tend to produce what flavors? Is there a hard and fast rule? Now, that's a great question that I think sometimes is misunderstood. People often, and this comes from wine culture, people often attribute taste to terroir, meaning the soil. But Lucia Solis, who's got a great podcast called Making Coffee, of course, is linked in the description below, has just actually demystified terroir and with science proven that what's in the soil does not get translated into what we taste. So then why do coffees from certain regions taste a certain way? Why does a washed coffee from Ethiopia taste often like peaches or white tea? And why does a naturally processed coffee from Costa Rica sometimes have the sweetness of a tamarind? And that has a lot to do with varietal and growing conditions. Now, varietal has to do with what type of fruit you're actually drinking. There are many different varieties of the coffee plant, and some, like the Red Haven peach, will be very acidic, and others, like the Baby Gold peach, will be much more sweet. Now, when it comes to growing conditions, there are other factors at play as well, like weather and elevation. So a coffee that's grown higher in elevation, let's say above 200 meters above sea level, is going to have a higher sugar content than a coffee that's grown lower. All of these things contribute to what we taste and what we ascribe to varietal in coffee. So pay attention next time you buy coffee to the variety on the bag. And if you have a little notebook like I do, maybe log that information. So next time you'll know, oh, I really like that varietal of coffee because it has this type of characteristic. Our final question comes from @Zeraffer, and they ask, what should a newbie know about home brewing? And if I was to say anything to someone new to brewing coffee at home, it would be this. Relax. You see, if you've made it this far in this video, you know that we've covered a broad spectrum of things. Everything from water chemistry to oxidation, from water temperature to terroir. It's a lot, and you don't need to know half of it to brew great coffee at home. If you have good water, a way to grind coffee fresh, and good quality coffee, you have most of what you need to brew great quality coffee at home. And if you have all those things, be okay with just those things. Just go and brew some coffee, make it a routine, make it a ritual, and pay attention to the coffee that you're making. Whatever you have at home today is just fine. Don't worry about looking and lusting over that new piece of gear or even that new coffee. Just focus on what you have today and be okay with it. All you have to do is stay curious, stay inquisitive, and have the courage to try something new. Whether that's a new process, a new origin, or even a new brew recipe, stay open to exploring everything that coffee has to offer because it's a gift. It's a gift to you, it's a gift to me, and it's something that is intended to be enjoyed in community. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those in the comment section below. I'll meet you there. And as always, my DMs on Instagram are open. But friend, until we talk again, keep brewing better coffee.
We are rolling. Hello. Thank you, Sunshine, for coming out. Where should I put my phone? Oh, that's good.